Good morning. It is Monday, August 19th, 2024. It's 10:48 Eastern Time, 7:48 West Coast time. I'm on the road, so I'm not doing webcam. No need to see my face this morning. I feel like it's been a while. I forget how to do these videos. Let's see if I can, remember how to do it. But anyway, this is Rob Sin at CEO Technician on X, at Goldfinger on CEO.ca. This is Goldfinger Capital on YouTube. As always, if you enjoy these videos, if you get value out of this presentation, please hit the like and subscribe to my channel. Also check out my Substack, Goldfinger Capital. So a lot has happened in the last week or so. We've had a very strong V bottom. Actually, it's now getting to the point of more than a V bottom. We're sort of above where we were a few weeks ago, before the Monday yen carry trade smackdown and the Friday smackdown prior to that. It was kind of like a Thursday, Friday, Monday market meltdown, and we've rebounded all the way back here to those early August highs in the S&P. Stocks, like Nvidia, actually above where they were at the beginning of August. So this has been an impressive rebound. And why did we have that 3-day meltdown in the first place? I mean, it's always difficult to explain market moves, and we're always just sort of making up or doing our best to infer what it was that drove capital flows. But basically, the yen carry trade is this trade that has been happening for 20 years. And it's essentially borrowing yen. So essentially, you're selling yen, you're shorting yen, because when you borrow, you owe yen to the lender. So by borrowing in yen, you're essentially short yen. And yen, interest rates, the Japanese interest rates, from the BOJ have been very low for a very long time. So you're borrowing at a very low interest rate, and then you're investing it in something higher yielding. So let's just say, like, this graphic shows, you're investing in dollars, getting 5% per annum. So you're making a 460 basis point spread, between what you're paying for your yen and what you're receiving for your dollars. But then you have a forex trade on, because then you're essentially short yen and long dollars. Well, this is the dollar yen cross. So this is how many yen one receives for $1. The yen has been falling, and the dollar has been strengthening against the yen for pretty much the whole first half of 2024, from 140 to over 160. Well, look at what happened there in the last month when this carry trade started to unwind, as the BOJ started to talk about raising interest rates, and then did raise interest rates a quarter point, 25 basis points. But it was enough to unsettle the people in this trade that maybe the yen was overextended to the downside, and this was going to unwind. And it's not even the 25 basis points that really caused it. It was the prospect of more moves by the BOJ, and just the fear that, you know, the dollar yen was at 140 not too long ago. What happens if it goes back to that level? Well, I could lose a significant portion of my investment, or I get wiped out, because when you're just trying to pick up 460 basis points, most of these trades involve leverage. So they might be leveraging up 5 times. They might even be leveraging up 10 times. Who knows? Nobody really knows how big this trade is, but it's clear it's in the trillion. So it's more than $1 trillion in total. Some people speculate it's 20 trillion. I don't think it's that big, but it could definitely be a couple trillion. And when everybody hits the exits at the same time, we can get moves like we had there at the beginning of the month. Well, what has happened since? Well, stocks have rebounded and complacency is rising, but the dollar yen cross, so this pair has barely picked itself up off the mat. I mean, it got down to 142 at the low. It's rebounded to as high as 149. Well, we're rolling over again. So the yen is strengthening against the dollar, And we're seeing the euro strengthen against the dollar. I mean, this is a flat out breakout in the euro, USD chart. 110.69 this morning, getting a golden cross, a confirmation that this is a new uptrend. Well, why is this? Why is this? Well, it's clear now the Fed is going to start cutting interest rates in September. And even if it's only 25 basis points to start off with, it's still the beginning of an easing cycle. And there's a whole lot of other things. This video is not going to be comprehensive because again, I'm on the road and I just wanted to address a few key points this morning. But it's clear the dollar is likely beginning a new weakening phase. Okay. And actually on X over the weekend, I posted a chart of the weekly US dollar index, and it's sort of testing the bottom rail of a symmetrical triangle. Well, is it going to break down? It's looking like it might. Okay, it's looking like it might. So if the dollar is breaking down, well, risk assets usually do pretty well. Okay, so it's tough to be short here. It's tough to be short equities, as we've seen with this rebound of the last couple of weeks. I know that I took some put trades at the end of last week, and I got my head handed to me. Pretty much probably going to get wiped out on those. Not a huge amount, and I really suggest to anybody doing options, just size your positions properly. Don't bet too big because options can easily go to zero. And so those options, those puts I bought on NVIDIA and the S&P are probably going to be worth zero here at the end of this week, but we'll see. That being said, I wouldn't chase this rally from the long side. This has been an incredible rip. But most likely with Jackson Hole, so Fed Chair Powell will speak Friday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern time at Jackson Hole Symposium. And they do this every August, end of August, Fed Symposium, central bankers congregate in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and talk about monetary policy, right? And it's clear he's going to lay out sort of the path, the easing path ahead. He's probably going to say data dependent, blah, blah, blah. I'm not sure this is going to be a groundbreaking speech, but the dollar is certainly getting whacked ahead of it. So that's worth paying attention to. And treasury yields have definitely rolled over in the last few weeks ahead of the speech. So what is that telling us? And what is gold telling us? Gold has had, a pretty strong move here in the last few weeks. It wasn't long ago gold was at 2350. Well, we hit 2549.90 on the front month futures contract, on the most active, futures contract. That's a big $200 an ounce move. That's a big move in less than a month. Okay. And the gold, I made a gold video, 10 days ago or something. All of the stuff I said in that video still holds true. And it's even more complicated than I even laid it out in the video because the Fed and the Treasury are really stuck. And this election cycle that's coming up here in the US only serves to highlight, to really put a magnifying glass on the problems of this country, of the West, the social welfare states of the West. And just to put it simply and bluntly, how screwed they are, and the debt situation, the debt spiral that these countries face. Okay. And so gold is the anti-debt, and gold is the fiat currency, the preservation of purchasing power over extended periods of time, yada, yada, yada. We all know that. And it's sending a message right now, right? It's telling a story. This move in gold is telling a story. A lot of gold market commentators, gold bugs have always thought, well, if stocks are doing well, gold can't do well. Wrong. That's not right. So anyway, that's kind of my brief macro commentary. Again, complacency is super high. Look at the put call ratio. 2 weeks ago, everybody was bearish. Everybody was jumping out of the window. This is the bear market. Everybody was convinced it started the bear market. Well, I don't know, guys. Doesn't look like it. But the complacency is really high all of a sudden. So everybody who was short has gotten steamrolled, stopped out, and they just give up, right? So when all the bears have given up and the bulls are happy again, that's a time to get a little concerned, right? A little concerned. Gold miners continue to trade really, really well. I mean, look at this. We're up another 1.27% this morning. So this sector is outperforming. This sector is doing very well. All the negativity around gold miners, well, it's the perfect backdrop for this bull market. The fact that it's so hated and these stocks are going up. That is what you want to see. Stocks are going up and everybody still hates them. Yes, that's what we like. And that's what's happening with the gold miners here in August 2024. Talked about NVIDIA. I mean, you couldn't pay me to own it at 125 heading into earnings, in the next week, but tough short. It's a tough short. Small caps. I mean, it's messy, it's sloppy, but it's still an uptrend. Schlumberger. So this is one of my longs. Double bottom. I didn't draw it on the chart, but it looks to me like a double bottom at 43. I think oil services win with either Trump or Kamala. Kamala will just mean that the price of oil is higher, and Trump will drill, baby, drill. So these companies will have a lot more work, a lot more revenues on their plates. So let's get rid of these and let's just focus on junior mining. So two news releases I'm going to talk about. Endurance Gold last week, August 13th, so last Tuesday, they gave an update from the Reliance project. They've drilled 5 holes at the Imperial Zone, which is sort of like the northern portion of this shear zone that they've been exploring for the last few years in the Braylorn region of BC. The news release is just shortened to the point. There's no hype in here. It just said we've completed 5 drill holes. These holes have expanded the Imperial Zone at depth and to the northwest by about 100 meters. So let's just look at this map. So here's the Imperial Zone. Here's the drilling. So they've been sort of stepping back to get a bit deeper into this Imperial Zone. A lot of the drilling has been pretty tight along this line, the strike extent, this southeast northwest line. To get deeper under this, because this is, like an orogenic system. So in theory, the gold feeder structures should go deep. They should run pretty deep. You just have to figure out the dip and the plunge to chase these things at depth. And so that's what you can see they've expanded these roads, and they're going to be hitting this from these roads that they've put in, and trying to get deeper into it, right? So seems encouraging just reading this news, knowing how the company likes to speak to its shareholders. This seems like a positive piece of news, but assays are pending. Probably early September, maybe in time for Beaver Creek, we'll get some of these results for the first 5 holes at Imperial, and they're drilling a 6th hole right now, targeting the depth extension below hole 84. So here's hole 84. So maybe the depth, so they drilled what could have been a depth extension over here, but maybe, because I don't see the 6th hole, which would be hole 88, I don't see it marked here. So maybe it's somewhere over here to the to the west, or maybe to the southwest. they're targeting the depth extension there. Next up will be to test this gap area between Crown and Imperial. So this is about 400 meters of strike extent, and it hasn't seen any drilling. And the reason why it hasn't seen any drilling is largely due to the fact that they didn't have the pads set up to drill it, and the soil anomalies were just better in these other areas, right? So they focused on those first, but testing the hypothesis, which is, the theory that these zones are connected, this is going to be very important to sort of test that hypothesis. So I like the update from Endurance. Share price is starting to get a little bit of buying. I mean, it's very modest still. This company's still very much under the radar, and it's gonna require assays that impress to get it front and center on investor radars. But I am a shareholder, big fan of Endurance Gold and Robert Boyd, the CEO. So final topic, it's Hercules Metals, and we got a news release from Hercules. Seems like during this summer they put out a news release about once every 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks. And this morning, so the just to summarize this, I'll just go through the news release. They got their U.S. Forest Service plan of operations for new drill sites, 15 drill sites, and it's a 1-year approval with the potential to extend further once they've completed an environmental assessment to secure longer term drilling rights. I think they want to get this extended to 5 years, I would imagine. But so they got it, and so now they can start to test some of these targets. Here's the Forest Service boundary, right? This is a very busy graphic, but basically they said they want to use pads 18 and 17, okay, and test a theory that the porphyry, so this is the top, or the upper parts of the porphyry, because it's been tilted to the northwest, are up in this area they've been focused on. This is the new learnings now. You gotta do the work. You gotta drill it to figure out the right model. These things are not simple. As we can Google, show me a porphyry model, like show me what a porphyry deposit should look like. Well, they're not always like that. These things can be pretty complicated, especially when the earth has shifted around and tilted, and there's been down thrust and like up thrust blocks on the project. It can be pretty tricky. It's a puzzle, it's a jigsaw puzzle. But it's clear, and they spell it out in the news release, they've been drilling the phyllic. Okay, so it's phyllic alteration, and with a hypogene enrichment blanket. Okay, so that's what they've spelled out in this news release, and they don't talk about details, but reading the words and that they would carefully choose their words. The phyllic zone that they've been drilling has been overprinted with secondary copper enrichment, which they interpret to be hypogene. And it seems that this, enrichment blanket is pretty widespread across the West. So I imagine that they've intersected this in multiple holes so far in 2024. I don't know the details, but that's my interpretation, right? But um they and so let's just step back in time a little bit here and just recall how this came together. So they did the IP survey in 2023, the deep IP, and they were focused, they did it throughout the property, but they were focused on this corridor. And it showed that chargeability target at depth. And they drilled it in the 5th hole of the program, right? They had 2 rigs in 2023. One was focused on the near surface silver. higher plate, the upper plate as they call it, and then the second rig to drill into the Triassic lower plate through the unconformity, which nobody had tested before. Nobody had ever drilled the lower plate, the Triassic, in this area of this project in history. It had never been tested. And the first hole into it was hole 2305. And that was the, 185 meters of 0.84% copper with that very nice, enrichment portion, which was like, 45 meters of almost 2%, right? It's basically 2% if you throw in the moly, and silver was probably more than 2%, right? So, new discovery, right? And the chargeability is showing us the porphyry. Well, no, now that we figured it out, the high chargeability is just showing that enrichment blanket and then a lot of pyrite in the phyllic, okay, that's underneath it, right? So it seems to me like a lot of these holes, like hole 2305, like hole 2326, 2321, have transitioned from enrichment into phyllic, and they're telling us in the news release that they have been drilling phyllic, right? There's no, we found the potassic, right? Like they're not saying that. It's a good news release, and it's very detailed. And this is an important part. As discussed above, the new mapping, suggests that the Leviathan system has been tilted to the northwest and plunges to the southeast. So if it's plunging to the southeast, that means that the potassic zone, the core of the system, in theory, where the higher grade copper and moly should be, is down plunge to the southeast, right? Um, the phyllic alteration typically overprints the upper part of a potassic core, while the higher grade core, deeper higher grade core, remains preserved. Okay. And this is also important. So in the potassic, you're going to get biotite. You're going to get biotite alteration. So drilling vertically through the highly chargeable phyllic zone has returned subtle biotite alteration. So they're getting sniffs of it, but they're not in it. They're not in yet the meat of the system, right? So this, people saying on co.ca, like, oh, the stock has moved up because somebody knows something. Well, we know exactly what they're telling us in this news, right? They haven't found the meat, the core of the system yet, but it seems like they're figuring it out and they've got a much better handle on things instead of just guessing, like they've been doing so far, and following this chargeability anomaly, which is not the meat of the system. Okay. And in fact, here they say, whereas moderate, so the high chargeability is the phyllic with the potential for hypogene enrichment at the top of it, right? So that's what the high chargeability is. It's the hypogene enrichment. So those, like that 2% copper we saw in hole 5, with phyllic right underneath it with a lot of pyrite. So the pyrite is probably more abundant than the chalcopyrite over here in the phyllic. But the moderate to low chargeability values in the eastern block, so over here by methane, which has the highest copper in soils, and over here by where they're drilling hole 13 right now, may be more consistent with a deeper potassic core with low pyrite. So, and then actually, let me show this graphic. So it's like they've been drilling up in here more pyrite than chalcopyrite with the enrichment blanket at the top. And we want to find this part, We want to find this part where the chalcopyrite is more abundant than the pyrite. You get magnetite, molybdenite, and then on the sides of it, you can get like this sphalerite, silver, chalcopyrite veins, right? And I don't want to get too far into the weeds here, but what I found interesting looking back through the news releases from 2023 is like hole 11 had the highest silver grades in the lower plate, right? Like they had this like really high silver portion as they got into the lower plate in hole 11, and then it trailed off, and copper grades weren't spectacular, but it was an interesting hole. And if you look at this graphic, you could be right on the margins of the potassic zone and see that kind of silver show up, right? So it's interesting. We're still trying to piece this puzzle together. Like I don't think anybody has this figured out yet. I don't think the company has this figured out, but I think they're based upon, I read this news release as very positive. Like it feels like they're on to something. They got the Forest Service permits. So another important piece of this news release is RC rig. They've just had a lot of trouble in some of the busted up portions of the upper plate with the core rigs, right? And a powerful RC rig can make quick work of that. And why didn't they do this previously? Well, some of it was road access. The roads weren't wide enough. RC rigs are bigger, and they didn't know exactly how difficult some of these holes were going to be. You don't know until you drill it. You don't know until you try it, right? Like it seems like they've learned a lot so far, and they're basically saying that they're going to use the RC rig to drill some of the existing zones that the company has been core drilling since 2023. So like we know that they had trouble with hole 9. Where's hole 9? Is it even on here? Well, anyway, we know they had trouble with hole 9 this year. We know they had trouble with hole 7. I imagine some of these other holes, the upper plate was challenging just by the rate of drilling. So bring in that new powerful RC rig, and I think this is hole 9. Yeah, it says abandoned, so they're not even counting it. Yeah, so hole 9 needs to be re-drilled with the RC rig, and use the core rigs over here, right? Hole 13 pointing to the east towards the Forest Service boundary, testing this chargeability donut, and then they'll build these pads at 18 and 17 and put another core rig over here and probably drill to the west. And if the system is plunging to the southeast, then they can hit it perpendicular from over here. Also, so this is on my Substack. This is a premium post, but I'm giving you a little teaser. I posted this last week. I love this, what I'm calling the chargeability donut target. I love this, and they gave us a hint with these 3 target arrows. There's only 5 on the whole map, and they drew 3 around this. That's where hole 13 is right now. And this is the lightning zone, right? So if we think about, if we go back to 2023 and the news releases they put out February, May 2023, the lightning zone was a high priority area. And then they drilled 2305 and they got distracted by the enrichment blanket, right? Lightning's never been drilled. I think this needs to be tested. And if you look at the soils over here, so here's lightning. Look at the soils. Strong. Look at the moly here, right? I mean, wow. It's the strongest moly and soil anomaly on the property. It's stronger than Grade Creek, I think. Certainly more widespread. Yeah, And if it is plunging to the southeast, well, I mean, it could plunge this way or it could plunge this way. We just don't know. But I like these two targets. Yeah. And also, I believe that Tom's fault is a major control here. And I'm wondering, after looking at Scout's model, if maybe there's multiple porphyry centers along Tom's fault, extending onto Climax on Scout's ground and the IXL, maybe some to the north of it, some to the south of it, but in proximity to this fault that's also running southeast, northwest, southeast, northwest. So we could go down the rabbit hole here. And then this video on YouTube is just it's interesting. I saw this, and this is where the porphyry was discovered, in this chargeability low, flanked by chargeability highs. Okay, and they just show how the ore body comes together, the drilling, blah blah blah. But this is boom, like that's a major light bulb moment right there, flanked by chargeability highs. I don't know, until it's drilled, until we have the assays, it's all speculation. But I like this morning's news release. It looks like it's confirmed a double bottom. The chart has. Technicals flashing positive here for BIG.V. So I guess some other people read this morning's news and also took it to be encouraging. So that's it for me today. Again, I'm on the road. I'll be on the road for another few days, several days actually. And I will update, but probably if I get around to, if I feel like I really have something to say, I might do a video after Jackson Hole on Friday or maybe Saturday. But that's it for me. Again, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for subscribing to Goldfinger Capital on YouTube. And again, subscribe on Substack so you make sure you get everything, all of my content. Thanks for watching. Have a powerful trading week.